Okay, I know that the title of this video refers to the Singer 6221C and the Sonata 6610 made by Singer, but I wanted to at least open it up and point at this other workbench to make note of kind of what my next week looks like, where I'm going to be focusing. The machine on the left is obviously the big sister to the Featherweight, the 301A. And that machine is going to get a general service, but it's also got some aesthetic challenges that you may be able to pick up in the camera. The paint patina on the bed, and I'll try to drop this light down just a little bit. Maybe I can even, yeah, I probably can put the extension bed out as well, just to kind of highlight it a little bit better, a little bit clearer. So we've got that going on. We've got this going on over here. We're not, good Lord, there goes my camera again. We're not looking at a full restoration as far as paint, decals, and clear coat like we just finished doing on Brad Stuman's from Tennessee. Brad has that really cool Model 66 red eye. You're going to see that this week on Facebook, and you'll also see it on this YouTube channel as well. But this 301A has, you know, general service needs and some paint patina and clear coat issues. So I'm going to see what impact I can potentially make for the customer there so that they don't have to incur the cost of a complete restoration on this 301A. All in all, it's really a pretty machine. Again, I refer to it as the big sister to the Featherweight, and this particular machine belongs to Sandra, who also happens to be a resident of the great city of Oconto. And I failed to mention to all of you folks that Oconto just this month celebrated 150 years. As a matter of fact, I was at a little business expo in the downtown area in a location called the Bond Center, and had a chance to pick up a couple of medallions, which are really cool. They're laser cut, and on the upper part of it, it's actually cut all the way through the coin. Really kind of fancy. I've had a number of, over the years through the military, different challenge coins, and I'll tell you one thing, these coins are I would say at the top of my list as the coolest type you know, commemorative type coins that I've ever seen. So I'll have to share those with you maybe through some Facebook posts, and who knows, maybe I'll give one away, and that way you can enjoy that. This machine that I've been focused on while I've been gabbing away actually belongs to Janet, and Janet is in this general locale as well. The interesting thing about these two ladies is that they're part of a quilting network, and originally on the left where the 301 is, the 301A, there was a Featherweight that came to me from Sandra that had some issues with it. If you go back on the Facebook post, you'll see that Featherweight where it had been oiled with the wrong oil, the wrong type of lubricant by a boyfriend, and we had to go through the innards of that Featherweight and get it back on track. And we also posted some YouTube videos on Sandra's Featherweight 221 as well. And now she's brought to me this Singer 301A, the big sister. So first of all, we have the princess from Sandra, and now we have the big sister from Sandra. So over here we have again the machine that came to me from Janet. And Janet originally brought to me a Janome newer model that had some issues with it. I posted it on Facebook, and now she's brought to me her very coveted Singer Featherweight 221 to take care of that machine as well. So I'm really appreciative of this network of quilters in the greater Oconto area. And I also have to do a little shout out to Mary Ann, who is the one that kind of opened the door and introduced me to a number of these ladies, and now they've learned that they don't have to travel 60 miles to get to a reputable place to take care of their quilting machines. They can come right to Oconto, which for some of them is just a matter of blocks away, and others just a couple of miles compared to 60. So it's a huge win-win for both the quilting group and certainly for me as well. All right, so finally, after this long introduction talking about these two machines on this other workbench, I'm going to swing the camera around. Actually, you know what? Before I swing it around, I think I'll zoom in on my computer, and it's for a reason. Let me go ahead and clear this. All right. So what I'm going to show you on the computer, and you could Google this, just as easily as I could, or as I have, I should say. Since the real core of this video is focusing on the Singer 6221C and the Sonata 6610 by Singer, which really are basically clone machines that were made in Brazil. They're Brazilian machines. So I thought, you know what? All of us have heard of the Hyundai Sonata, right? And so what is the meaning of Sonata? Why is everyone using this? Car makers are using it. It's got roots, obviously, in the musical realm, because Sonata, and Bill, you already know this, you could probably shout it out to all of us. Sonata is an instrumental musical composition, typically of 3 or 4 movements in contrasting forms and keys. But as you go in depth and you look at, okay, what are all the roots? What is the meaning of sonata? You get some crazy definitions. One of them has Latin roots, and it actually refers to a very buxom woman. So, you know what? Define sonata however you want to define it. But Singer also decided to capitalize on this particular word back in the 1970s. And you can see right here, we've got a sonata, and the model, again, if I zoom in on it, is the Sonata 6610 by Singer. I'll zoom in actually on the branding on the machine right there. And it's basically a 10-stitch machine. And you can look at some of the features and benefits of it. Here you've got a really large dial on the front of it that controls a variety of different things. It's got built-in settings for buttonholes. It's got a reverse button right in the middle. It's got a dial setting so you can set stitch length. And up top, if we go to the top area, it's got some preset type stretch stitch settings on the far right, and then you've got a variety of different stitches here. You can see them through the camera, everything from a buttonhole to straight to stretch, and it goes on and on and on and on. You can see them all there on the camera, right? So I happened to get this Sonata in just the other day from a referral from a family member who had someone at church that this has been her go-to quilting machine, and it all of a sudden experienced a problem in the raceway where the bobbin raceway hook system kept popping out. And so Kathy was obviously really frustrated because this is a machine she's used for probably 10 years, and it's been just a core machine that has, you know, been her go-to machine. It's easy to use. It's light enough that she can haul it around with her and everything like that. It's got some, you know, decent harp space. I wouldn't say it's phenomenal harp space. And then it also has the free arm function as well. And so as I started to dig into this machine yesterday, just to get an idea, you know, is it worth repairing? I discovered quickly that in order to resolve the raceway issue down here, because part of the hook system on this machine is plastic, and over time plastic, as you know, degrades, it chips, it warps, there's a variety of different things. And I had to reach out to her today and basically just tell her, you know what, in all honesty, you've gotten a lot of mileage out of this Sonata, and I don't think it's going to be worth the $150 to $175 investment to fix it. And I said, but I think I might have a solution. Now, whenever you mention that you've got a solution in trying to replace someone's go-to machine that they've had for over a decade, it's terrifying to them, because especially as we get older, change is more difficult. You get something that's comfortable and that works, kind of like this camera. And I've touched on that a couple of times, where this has been my go-to camera since actually before I joined YouTube. And so the idea of changing and going to something different, it's not a real comfortable feeling. And so as I started to, you know, share the idea of, well, we could make a transition from this Sonata 6610 that has a lot of miles on it, and it's not really, it's just cost prohibitive to repair it at this point. We can find another machine that's going to be similar. And as I started to look through my inventory, again, 200 plus machines, I found even a better match than similar. I found a near mirror image of the Sonata, and that comes in the form of this Singer 6621C. Now you can look at them and you're not tripping out or something like that. This is the 6221C. This is the 6610. Look at them side by side if I come out a little bit. I mean, the similarities between them is absolutely crazy. I mean, the layout of the controls is so similar. You know, there's a couple of very subtle differences, nothing earth-shattering. And as I step over to those machines a little bit, let me flip my screen around. I'm just going to gesture at the machines, just show you, I mean, when it comes to different stitch widths between your zigzag type stitches, identical. Boom, boom, exactly the same between the Sonata 6610 and the Singer 6221. I'm sorry, 6221. See, both of these again, Brazilian machines made by Singer. Sonata was kind of an offshoot of Singer, but received the branding of Singer, and the 6221C was a machine actually made in the lineup of Singer. And so, and then as you look at some of the other things, tension control, identical. Raceway and presser foot, feed dog features, everything about it, drop-in bobbin on both of these machines, exactly the same. Even some of the controls across here. Here you're gonna, in order to change stitches, you're gonna turn this little knob and it's gonna move across to different stitches. Here you got a little slider and you're just gonna slide it basically to go from one stitch to another on the Sonata. So they're really easy. And here you've got a needle position here that is real prevalent right here as a standalone. Here you've got a needle position that you control through the same knob that can cause the stitch options to change as well. Again, as you look at the machines on top, they're basically identical. This area again here is nearly identical. So it was a perfect fit. And the beauty of the 6221C is that it has extremely low mileage. So it's going to be a go-to machine now for years and years and years to come, where this machine has had a lot of use, and it's pretty much at the end of its life unless you're willing to invest a lot of money into it to get it back into a condition where it's going to be a serviceable and a workable machine. So it really was a fit made in heaven. It was a match made in heaven when it came to just the, you know, the similar nature of these two machines. Again, if I zoom in a little bit more and you look at them, I mean, gosh, apart from, you know, this newer, slightly newer Singer 6221C having more stitch options, you know, if you zoom in out real close, you can see right here on the 6221C, we've got 20 stitches, which includes two different styles of buttonholes. You know, we've got the blind hem, we've got stretch, we've got all kinds of pattern stitches. So you've got, you know, 20 there. You come over to this machine and you basically have 10. If you count the buttonholer, you got 11. So the other great thing about this for Kathy is that as she migrates over to this other machine, she's going to have wider stitch option variations, and yet still the comfort of the controls being nearly identical to what she has now, or what she has had with the Sonata. So the other thing I wanted to show you is that there's also been some improvements on these machines. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Lighting is so critical, right? It's so critical when you're talking about working with a machine. That's why people have made money off of selling auxiliary lighting because the lighting on some machines is just horrible. And you can almost, even with some of the newer LED lights, you can almost go blind trying to see down at the needle and see what's happening when you're trying to sew. Well, this 6221C really was a huge improvement from a lighting standpoint. As a matter of fact, to emphasize that, I'm just going to real quick see if I can get rid of the lights closest to the workbench. I hope I don't pull the wrong one out here. There we go. Still quite a bit of light over there because of my other light. I'll drop that one as well. I don't know if we're going to be able to see if I do that. Yeah, not too well. But if I turn on the light on the SONATA, I'm going to kind of reach across the camera real quick here. There's our light for the SONATA. Not horrible, right? I mean, it's fairly bright if I kind of zoom in on the needle and the area of the feed dogs down there. So we've got a lighted area. Yay. But if I zoom out again and you see it side by side in contrast with the slightly newer model 6221C, check this light out. Maybe just a little bit of a difference. So here we've got the Singer 6221C. I just find that incredibly bright. I mean, that's the kind of lighting I like. And then we go over to this model and you can see it's a lot more muted. Now, granted, how clean is the bulb? What type of bulb is it? Can play a factor into it. I'm not naive, and I know you're not naive either. But the reality is I've checked these two machines out. Singer really did do an incredible step up on the lighting quality on this 6221C compared to the SONATA by Singer 6610. And so I see that as a major plus. I'm going to zoom out and I'll turn my light back on again. Even from a distance you can see, in my opinion, you can see the pronounced difference in the illumination down at the needle, which kudos to Singer for improving on that. Sometimes, you know, they move from one model to another. It's kind of like cars, and they change the model number or the model name, and there's not really, you know, what's the difference? You really can't really tell. It just doesn't seem very notable. Now, what about maintenance on these two machines? Are they going to be similar? Well, they will be. They'll be very similar. But accessing that area to service them is an entirely different matter. The Singer 6221C is really easy to take that top off and get to the different lubrication points that can sometimes be neglected on machines from this era, where a lot of that stuff is kind of encased in this cover and you've got to really work to get at it. And so what do most people do if it's a lot of work? They don't do it. And even the technicians that they take it to don't want to bother with it, so they don't do it either. They lubricate what they can get to, and that's where they stop. So getting this cover off, I'm just going to pull these bolts out. The other thing I'm going to point out is, and it's a real subtle difference, but even the bolts on these two machines on the top and the placement of the bolts is different as well. So I took out this first one on the far left. I'm going to go ahead and set it down on the plexiglass. Actually, I'll set it down next to the plexiglass because it's trying to roll away. So you've got a short, on the 6221C, you've got a short bolt over here on the far left. You also have a short bolt in the rear of the machine on top. And then in the front, right-hand side, you've got a long bolt. So, and why do I say that? Because if you're ever trying to put something back together and you end up trying to put the wrong bolt in the wrong spot, it can be a real headache, but it also can damage the threading in there, because that's plastic threading, folks. So if you try putting a large bolt in a smaller hole, you're either going to strip it out potentially or you're going to crack it. So knowing what order and where those bolts go is important. Now that we've taken those 3 bolts out on this 6221C by Singer, we just have to lift this up, pretty much. Well, not true. I actually caught myself there. You've got to pull a couple little plastic tabs off. One from the stitch width control, and then we have to take this one off over here that is the stitch settings. And then, dun, 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 then we can take it off. Just kind of rotate it forward a little bit, and then it comes off very, very nicely and very easily. Now, when we go over to the Sonata, I wish I could tell you it was as easy. It isn't. They have this packed on tight enough where this bobbin winder controller is that you have to kind of arc the back up and get it past this bobbin winder to get the top off. It's a real pain in the neck. I obviously wanted to try it before I was on camera, and I thought, oh my gosh. Now here I goofed up because I didn't pull those little knobs off real quick before I tried to take the top off. Here I might totally choke on trying to get this cover off. So I'm going to do it right to begin with and get these off first so that I don't mess up there again. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to take the bolts out. Now here, on the left side, we've got a long bolt on the Sonata, much longer than the other ones. I'll kind of put it down here on the table and hopefully it doesn't roll away. And then we've got 2 short ones on the right. So again, if you have a Sonata, you're going to want to take note of this so that you get those bolts back in the correct spots so that you don't have a problem with cracking your lid or stripping one of these holes out that holds that lid in place. You're going to have a lot of vibration and a lot of headache. So as we try to get this lid off, it's not quite as easy. We've got to kind of rock it forward and kind of loosen it up and then try to get it past this thing. It's not easy. Matter of fact, I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit so that you don't have to watch me blocking the machine completely. And then we'll look at the two of the machines from the top a little bit. So this is our obstacle right here, this thing. Keep going, Scott. That little booger right there catches on the edge of that lid as you try to rotate it forward, and it gives you a battle in trying to get that lid off so that you can service this machine properly. Needless to say, if you bring a Sonata into a technician, unless it's me, they're going to say, oh, no way, I am not going to monkey around with that. I'm going to lubricate what I can get, and that's where it's going to stop, folks. So here you have to kind of, it's a lot of work. It's really kind of a nightmare. Singer did an excellent job in improving the lid design on the 6221, so you didn't have to battle it to this degree. Oh my Lord, it's absolutely crazy how much you have to work this thing to get it past that lid. Holy cow, did you hear that? Man, oh man, it's no easier to get it on. It's just as bad to get it back into place. Just gonna check these and oh my gosh. And then you can't even get it off all the way because they have the lid running in a closed space through the handle. So you got to kind of rotate it back in a Mickey Mouse way in order to be able to even service this machine. So I'm going to go ahead and increase our elevation a little bit with my camera and see if I can at least show you the innards of this. So as we go from one of these machines to the other, you're going to be able to see there's subtle differences between the two, but the overall layout of the mechanics of these machines is going to be real close. The cam stack's a little bit different between the two of them. You can see the cam stack right there in view, about center in the picture. It's got a different movement system. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of the movement system for stitch changing on the 6221C. It's got basically a almost like a cabling system. See that, where it kind of runs across? These cabling systems, depending on what they use for the cable, can be notorious for failing and for having mechanical issues. So I'm not a real huge fan of that. In some respects, the Sonata that Singer made actually has a slightly better design, where it's got a lever system on some pivots that allow you to change a stitch length. It's got a track that it flows on right there, so it's a lot more secure as you move across that track to go between the different stitch patterns, versus this one over here, where again you've got this it's basically a type of string that cables that runs across there. You know, granted, the string is very strong, and I'm sure it'll be fine, but I'm a fan of levers, just because lever and tracks, because they're a little bit more secure. They have less breakdown possibilities. Not a bad cam stack design here. And then we move over to the SONATA. You can see obviously a smaller cam stack, because it has almost half the number of stitch options that the 6221C has. But all in all, they're both, you know, decent machines from the 1970s. I wouldn't say they're phenomenal machines, either one of them, but there are some improvements that they made from the 6610 SONATA to the Singer 6221C, and you know, also I think they fell back on a couple of things as well. I think the lighting improvement on the 6221C is great. I think adding some additional stitch options is fantastic. But again, the cabling system that you use for changing between stitches, I don't know that I'm a huge fan of that. Also, I think sometimes it's helpful to have a standalone knob when it comes to changing needle position, instead of having a knob that has dual functions, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get it to do this versus doing that. But all in all, I think that you know, the Singer 6221C is a solid machine from the 70s. Solid as they go from the 70s, because you know, there were some compromises as they moved from the 50s into the 60s, where they started to cut corners because things were not about quality and craftsmanship anymore. It was about increasing profit margins and reducing build costs when it came to the machines. So I just wanted to show this video because, and this premiere, because it gives me an opportunity to show two machines that are branded differently by the same company, how they have a lot of similarities, how they have differences. They're from slightly different eras, you know, early to mid 70s versus latter part of the 70s going into 80s, and just how they migrate through change as you're looking at them, you know, changing their habits in how they design, build, and construct machines. Even in a period of 10 years, it can change dramatically. But some of the things, thankfully, were preserved between these two machines. And again, it's subtle and maybe not even worth mentioning, but I think it is. You know, if you have one of these machines, remember on the SONATA that you're going to have a long bolt on the far left, and then on the right side of the machine to get that cover off, if you decide to tackle it, because it's not easy. On the right side of the SONATA, you're going to have these two shorter bolts. And then, unlike me when I was working with a 6221, before you try to take the cover off, you have to take these little plastic tabs off that are controller center points on the machine. And then if we move over to the Singer 6221C, remember on this one, where is it? Ah! There it is! Yay! Okay, as you move over to this machine, remember the order here, where on this machine, if you happen to have a Singer 6221C, on the left side of the machine, you're going to have a short bolt. Then on the rear of the machine, you're going to have a short bolt. And then on the front of the machine, you're going to have a long bolt when you're putting that cover back on. And you may be real fastidious and you know, persnickety about disassembling things, but sometimes people, they're so excited to say, you know, I got the top off and I want to look at the innards and take care of trying to service it as best as I'm able. They'll lose track of which bolt was which, and so you can refer back to this video just as a reminder of you know, what the difference is, so that you don't miss thread or cross thread or crack that lid and then have a machine that vibrates all the time and drives you nuts. But you know, again, back to the machines, if we go back to the top of the machines, again, you're looking at similar mechanics all the way across. Even the belt is identical between the 6221C and the Sonata. You can see that right there. These also have kind of a fun clutch release on them as well. And there's other machines like this that Singer made, but instead of unscrewing something, I gotta flip my screen around because, yeah, you can kind of see. I'll move it over just a little bit. Instead of having to unscrew a clutch, because you don't have the benefit of, say, a Husqvarna where you just put a bobbin on that bobbin winder and it disengages the clutch automatically. Here, there's just a little place to push, and then it pops in, and the clutch is no longer engaged, so you could push on the foot controller, and that needle's not going to move, and then when you want to resume sewing, just pop it back in again. So I think that's a neat feature. I kind of wish other makers had made the clutches like that. They're in many ways a lot easier to maintain and work with, and they're just a little bit more convenient when it comes to not having to fight that clutch. Because if you've ever had it happen, when you tighten that clutch down so that it doesn't slip or move when you're sewing, and you go to try to loosen it up again just through the activity of the machine, you can sometimes feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger trying to, you know, pump yourself up to get that thing loose again. They could tighten up as the machine operates. So, at any rate, just a simple video to contrast these two machines. Again, I think that they're both relatively solid machines, and as Kathy gets ready to make this migration from the Sonata that she's had for over a decade to this Singer 6221C, I think she's going to find that transition really easy. Plus, she's going to find all of those added benefits of different stitch options that she did not have on the Sonata. And also, if she decides she wants to oil it in between bringing it to me for major servicing, she can get that lid off of that Singer 6221C so much easier than that Sonata 6610 by Singer on the right. Oh my gosh, I hate that lid. I hate that lid so much. So the other thing I'm going to try to do real fast here before I run out of battery power or space is just show you the bed length. Now the bed length is going to be identical on these two machines. So I'm going to kind of zoom right over here, and I'll just kind of shout out the numbers to you in case you're curious and you're saying, I wonder how big that bed space is. I wonder how much harp space these two machines have, whether the Sonata or the 6221C, and now you'll know. So, from the pillar to the end of the machine, the edge of it right here, you're looking at 9 inches. The width of the free arm, which is a big factor depending on the type of sewing you're looking to do, some of these free arms are so huge, you try to slide them over a sleeve or a pant cuff for a smaller person or a child, and it's almost impossible. This is a little bit more of a girthy free arm on this one and the Sonata. It's going to be a little bit over 3 inches. Some of the machines, the Necki machines, the Husqvarnas have a smaller free arm, and it's a lot easier to work depending on the type of sewing that you're looking to do using that free arm. So needled to pillar, which is again I know a critical measurement, and I'm going to kind of bring it out just so I can extend it easier. You're looking at about 7 inches. Okay, and then if we go from the bed to the top, you're looking at a little bit short. Well, actually, if I kind of bend my knees a little bit and look down, it's right around 5 inches. So I believe that's going to be pretty close to what we saw on the Husqvarna CL21A that was just sent out to Sharon as well. It's going to have about a 5-inch clearance in that harp space for turning materials and just having that vertical clearance. So not bad measurements, not a bad bed space to work with. You know, it ain't a Husqvarna, but it's a great basic machine for home sewing. And the only thing I haven't mentioned so far, you might be shocked during the course of this premiere saying, I can't believe Scott hasn't mentioned what size motor do these two machines have. Well, okay, I heard you that time, all right? So the size of the motor on these two machines is going to be identical. They're both 0.75 amps. So when you look at the size of these motors on these machines, you're looking at a machine motor that is going to be larger than a number of the Singer vintage machines. Now, would I compare a vintage motor to a contemporary motor that was made not even near to the quality standards of a vintage one? I probably wouldn't, but just for sake of spouting out what the amperage is supposed to be, these two are both rated at 0.75. And as you know, the 201-2s are 0.6, 1591s are 0.6 amps as well. You've got machines like the 401A that is actually larger than either one of these machines. You're looking at about 0.9 amps, almost an amp, when it peaks out on the 401A compared to either the Sonata or the Singer 6221C. But these are decent sized motors. 0.75 amps is nothing to apologize for.